What is up, everybody? Here we go. Had some technical difficulties today, starting a little later, but that's okay. I had to digest my food anyway. Maybe I got a little more energy, but we got an exciting show today. Episode 6 of Bitcoin Shrooms. The specialty today is finishing up the mining category. We got a fascinating one today. With me, we got Kenny. How you doing today, Kenny?
What's up, guys? Good to be back. Shroom episode 6. I'm so pumped up for this one today. Let's fucking go.
Yeah, this is going to be a great episode. And we also have as a guest who's come on at least one other time, we've got Snoop Toshi. Welcome, Snoop.
Hey, thank you for having me. Looking forward to another shroom off.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, welcome. And then, of course, between Kenny and Rolo, we've got basically the history of Bitcoin covered. If you're not following Kenny, which is I think is OX6 Paths or something, he posts about shrooms pretty much daily, and there's always great insights there and a lot of the root of our understanding. But I gotta every week, Rolo, as I go through the show notes for shrooms and kind of the history of shrooms, I'm always amazed at, like, each week I feel like you're digging deeper and deeper, and it's really cool. Like I've been in this space 10 years, certainly not OG, but like I thought I knew a lot of stuff, and you're just uncovering so many cool aspects to the history of Bitcoin through the lens of Bitcoin Shrooms. So thanks for all you do, man, and welcome to the show. Why don't you tee us up for what we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, good morning. Happy Thursday, Shroom fam. Thanks for coming on the set. Yeah, it's been my pleasure. It's really been just a wild run, just learning more than I ever have about Bitcoin and the Bitcoin Shrooms. It's been just a true pleasure. And today, really excited, of course, to have 7 incredible shrooms focused on the theme of Bitcoin mining. So we're gonna learn a little bit more about that today, and we can crack into it whenever you guys are ready. Super excited.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. So the theme is mining today. And I know usually we cover a lot of shrooms, but I actually like this better. We're going to cover 7 total today, but it really is a deep dive on mining. I think we hit a lot of Lightning Network last week. I think we touched on a couple aspects of mining, but this week in mining really is the kind of like the history and the nuts and bolts of mining, from volcanic to balancers to all sorts of stuff. So yeah, I mean, totally. take us in, man.
Yeah. It gets a lot cooler this time around. I think last time we did about the first half of the mining theme, and there were some cool tidbits in there. This time, like you said, we're going to go a little bit deeper and really kind of get into the fine nitty-gritty with Bitcoin mining. So with that said, we can start with our first piece here. So we have ordinal number 694, which is called volcano mining. And this is, I think it's a really unique and fun design. I like the symbolism here. I've got volcanic activity producing these orange glowing Bitcoins. And I think the only slight knock I'd give is maybe just the presence of the brown color, since I'm not a personal fan of that, but that's just me. And so I did a little post in the middle of the week as a fun experiment. I spent like maybe about a half hour just creating an alternate version of Shrimtoshi's little masterpiece here by changing the colorway into maybe a more volcanic ash aesthetic. And it was just for fun, really, just for entertainment purposes, but and not a knock on the great Shrimtoshi's art, but it was merely in the spirit of, you could imagine how the Marvel universe kind of plays with alternate universes. I just wondered to myself, what would it be like if this shroom looked a slightly different way? And so I put the two up side by side just to show folks. And it's an amazing piece as it is, and I just thought that would be a fun little idea. But quick note about it, it's for sale currently. It's listed for 21.7 Bitcoin. So if that price is of interest to you, by all means, go right ahead. And just want to know what you guys think about this little guy.
What do you think, Snoop? I'm pulling up the picture. I didn't realize that was important to you. You really put a lot of work into that alternate one.
It really, yeah, it was.
When I look at this, I like to think it's Mother Nature validating blocks.
Yeah.
I like that.
Using geothermal for hash power. I think that's the essence behind this specific shroom. At least that's what I've always read into it.
Doesn't get more organic than that.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Kenny?
Yeah, I like this Bitcoin Shroom a lot. I think it's very history rich, and I also think that it kind of takes that shroom look, but kind of adds a little like twist to it. I think like the volcano shooting out small Bitcoins is really cool, artistically solved really well. I feel like once again, I think I guess like all shrooms are artistically very nice, but this one's definitely also one of my top favorite ones, I'd say. Lots of stuff you can do with it, like gift wise as well, as we've seen before. If you guys are in the shroom chat, we have like a couple of gifts, and I believe the volcano is one of them as well, which is really cool. So I like this one a lot.
Yeah, no, I think aesthetically this one is super cool. And Rolo, I'm still like I see what you did with the black there, and that does look nice. I just love that you recreated this shroom because it had the color brown in it. Like I think both look good, but yeah, it is aesthetically pleasing, and I just love this one, and I agree with what Snoop said. Like, to me, if I've got solar panels on my roof. I put them on like 10 years ago, and I think they're producing energy. I haven't checked in like a year, but I think they still work. But the subsidies for it were great, but the reality is a lot of people know that solar and even windmills to a certain degree, like, they produce more energy, but they're not replacing oil or nuclear or the big energy producers, but in any
Right.
time soon. But volcanic, to me, like, I don't like Mother Nature belching and just hot fire from like the Earth's mantle and core. To me, the fact that and I know we'll get in the lore in a second, but the fact that Buckley did that and other people have mined based on volcanic pressure and activity and steam is just so effing badass. And to me, is just such a rich part of the history of Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining.
Yeah, totally. And thank you for the compliments. It was funny. Short the Dollar made a really funny comment saying it because if you're not appropriating someone else's art, are you really NFTing? Which is almost a direct quote of Shrimtoshi. So I kind of had to do the same here. But yeah, I totally
Well,
agree. It's pretty
called recursion
unbelievable.
now.
What's that?
It's
Sorry.
all good. It's called recursion now, so it's all good. It's all fair game.
That's right. That's right. Recursive art here. But and no, I agree. It's absolutely fascinating, and it doesn't get more, you know, primal than that. So I really love this room on many levels. So um, with that said, we can dive into the lore behind this one. And Shrimtoshi's description for it was Grumpy Gamer to put a bunch of Bitcoin miners on Melee Island in his next Monkey Island adventure. And he leaves a link there that takes us to the original Twitter post from Nayib Bukele, president of El Salvador. And I think this is a really epic historical reference to one of the coolest moments in recent Bitcoin history. It was on, I think it was September 28th, 2021. The president of El Salvador announced via Twitter that the country, the first to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, would begin using geothermal energy from its volcanoes to power Bitcoin mining operations. And at the time, as we kind of mentioned, that was a groundbreaking move, pretty much combining limitless renewable energy with Bitcoin mining, especially since nation states had really just begun to openly criticize mining's high energy consumption and potentially harmful environmental footprint. So that was a pretty bold thing to do at the time. And the Shroom also calls on a gentleman by the name of Ron Gilbert, who was the creator of the award-winning video game series Monkey Island. So I was wondering what the hell that's about. And the game itself, it features an active volcano as part of its landscape, which I had no idea.
Nice.
Uh, yeah, and additionally, the island was known as Melee Island, and it was a key location in that series that had its own little quirky economy and governance. So I guess you could imagine humorously, that the island being sort of disrupted by the introduction of Bitcoin and its own circular economy. So I think that's maybe what he was getting at. But I was also curious, why of all games Shrimtoshi mentioned this and was even aware of it. Like how did it make its way onto the Shroom collection of all things? And a little further digging showed that the Monkey Island series possesses this cult classic status that I had no idea about either. And the original game, The Secret of Monkey Island, it was released in 1990, and there were actually several other sequels that followed. And they gained a lot of notoriety due to their witty humor. They had clever puzzles involved, really memorable characters. And the creator was known for this, I guess, this self aware, sharp humor with all of these pop cultural references in it. There was this level of absurdity that seemed to resonate with players of all ages. And so that style and humor, I think, is something that Shrimtoshi resonates a lot with. And I think you can really see that in a lot of his pieces. So I thought this was really cool. Just a very random and esoteric reference. And what's maybe even more interesting was the timing of it. Bukele made that tweet at the end of 2021, and the Monkey Island franchise had just seen a return to form in September of 2022 with a release, ever since the 90s sequel. So it kind of came back, and it's quite literally just a few months before the first Bitcoin ordinal was inscribed on December of 2022. So a theory would be that in this game, was on Shrimtoshi's mind, I think, shortly before the collection was actually released. So it's kind of interesting timing, and I just think it's a really cool plugin and very cool shroom.
So there's actually in the Curse of Monkey Island, there's a character named Sherman who's a volcano god that's worshipped by the cannibals of the island. They
That's
believed him
incredible.
to be some sort of vegetarian or lactose intolerant or something, which led them to offer them vegetarian-like offerings, which was sort of quite amusing because the volcano god from Cannibal Island, eating vegetarian. And to me, I think that's the parallel that he may be looking for, which is again this essence of turning lava into hash power. This volcano god doing something a little strange. I like to think that
even deeper. I love that
deep down.
Yeah,
I mean, his love of pixel
kind of
art.
get
I mean,
that
he
vibe.
must be a big gamer.
I was going to say the same thing. If you've gone with that 8-bit direction, paying homage to the NES classics, that there's something there to that.
100%. And I know you're speculating that maybe this was high on his radar. Then he was probably in the middle of playing this game. It sounds like
Yes.
It sounds like this game had a super big following, and when this one came out, it was very well received, and the old and new fans alike were quite thrilled. But it's cool too, because when we grow up, when you think of art and artists, like my mom gave art lectures, and it was always like the Renaissance, and it was always this old art. Like, how cool is it now that you're like, yeah, and his inspiration was this awesome video game called Monkey Island. Like, it was very quirky and nuanced. Like, it's cool to talk about this stuff in real time with contemporaries, because it's something that you can relate to more,
Totally. It is interesting, and the format of the subject matter just kind of changes a little bit, but parallel aspects and just different strokes. That is very cool.
Yeah. So just
I agree.
I love I love some of the shots that you got for El Salvador and for Bukele, because that was a huge announcement. And think about it. I mean, yeah, obviously he was, in the past administration, he was kind of made to be a bad guy, but we know, the IMF has been trying to like rein him in. He jailed a bunch of people, who were like gangbangers and drug dealers and stuff. And
right.
It's pretty draconian what he did, but he basically made it so citizens could actually, like live again and not be controlled by these gangs and in fear. So obviously I don't live down there. I haven't been down there. It's probably way more nuanced than that. But the fact that he was the first one to make Bitcoin legal tender is huge. It's absolutely huge.
Yes. I have heard some stories from some people who've gone. They said it's quite nice. Like you said, I haven't been myself to actually really see what the nuances are, but I largely agreed. At least at face value, it's very interesting, the 180-degree turn that country has done under the new regime, and for better or worse, it's, like you said, made it a much safer place. The unfortunate newsflash and current events update is that as of December 2024, El Salvador ceased its volcano-powered mining operations. I was a little bit dejected to see that, but the decision was part of an agreement made with the IMF to secure a $1.4 billion loan. And that was basically a requirement, the country to reduce its involvement with Bitcoin, including winding down its mining activities. And even further, El Salvador has since revoked Bitcoin's status as legal tender. So I found that pretty disheartening, especially because of all the hype, that Bukele had built up around this endeavor. And it really seemed like he was going to be a maverick and do something different. But I think many of us were really rooting for them to stick it to the IMF, but it seems that they ultimately bent at the knee, and that's, at least right now, that's the state of affairs, and we'll kind of have to see what happens. But if nothing else, I still think it could be said El Salvador was a pioneer in doing a lot of bold things in the realm of Bitcoin, and they were one of the first dominoes to fall in terms of catalyzing the global discussion about adoption. And look where we are now. A lot of things have certainly changed, and I think somewhat attributable to that. But it's interesting to see what has kind of transpired.
Yeah, and it just makes you kind of wonder what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, obviously with Doge and Elon and Trump exposing U.S. aid for all the crap they're doing. If you're listening to Joe Rogan and looking at the Twitter timeline at all with a guy named Mike Benz, you're seeing things he's been uncovering for the last 10 years on how it does the dirty work of the spy agencies when they won't even touch something, but I'm reading a great book right now called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And it's about a guy from the 70s and 80s, like the first generation of folks who would go in, secure through the World Bank or the IMF, these huge loans with and they'd make them, to build infrastructure in there. And then of course, the countries couldn't pay them back. So what happens? The whole goal is to seize their energy and their resources, their underground resources. So
got them by the cojones.
Yeah, the fact that Bukele caved when Trump is coming into power, I just wonder if he could go back to that, or if there's way more going on here. It's like there's different power factions, but to me, like I said, I haven't lived down there, so the truth may lie somewhere in the middle. But the IMF, the fact that they pressured Bukele to take a $1.4 billion loan to cut back on his reliance on Bitcoin because, in their words, it's too unstable and too volatile. Like what the fuck do you care? Like it just makes no sense to me, and it just shows really you how much control there is. But the reason I bring up this book, Economic Hitman, is because this guy met with the Panama this Democratic guy of Panama when in the time with Jimmy Carter, when Panama got the canal back from Jimmy Carter, and his plane went down, but there was all sorts of that shenanigans going on in Costa Rica and over in Asia as well around this time, where if you didn't play ball, like you probably weren't going to make it. And I just wonder if that's still the case. So sorry, go ahead.
That's
Snoop.
wild. Have to wonder.
No, I mean, it is, I'm curious, are they selling all of their BTC? Have they sold their BTC? I mean, you can buy a lot of BTC for 1.4 billion. If he had managed to convert to fiat, wait for the dip, and then jump back into Bitcoin and get even more Bitcoin, is that not potentially bullish?
They mined a total
silver lining here.
Yeah, it was 874 Bitcoins, I think they mined since the inception. Something around 46 million. Yeah. I don't know. Ostensibly seemed to be going pretty well, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that'd be awesome if they turned around and bought it. But it looks like they had to cancel that Chivo wallet, which was like their central Bitcoin wallet initiative, but it passed with overwhelming support. So, I mean, yeah, who knows why they did it, but I love Snoop's take. Like if he turned around and used that loan to buy Bitcoin and then pay off the interest, like most countries, you're not supposed to be able to pay your debt back. You'd be like, a month later, you're like, and here's the interest. And now I have $2.7 billion in Bitcoin.
Right.
So F off. Like you're taking a loan from them that they see as loan sharky and mafia rates. And then you actually turn it around and just make money on Bitcoin. So who knows, but I wanted to bring that up because I'm right in the middle of that book, and it's just with all the USAID stuff being exposed, it's interesting, and I'll be curious how this evolves as Trump is president, because I would assume Trump couldn't care less about this stuff, but I don't know what's going on between him and the IMF and the WEF and all those other three-letter horror agencies that kind of rule the world right now.
That's fascinating. Thanks for sharing it. I really had no idea.
You're welcome. So where are we? What do you want to chat about now? You want to go? I was actually doing research while we were talking about. Should we move to the next one?
Yeah, we can get right on to our next little piece.
Okay.
I was going to say the one silver lining. I think the country's treatment of Bitcoin over there is still relatively friendly. And there are, from my understanding, I was doing a little bit of research, and there's still a grassroots circular economy that exists there. So it's not like they banned it. I think it's just that they really took a step back to do whatever they're doing with this side of the business. So
remember,
we'll see.
One thing that also might be worth pointing out, recall most of last year what the fucking network fees were. We were seeing double, triple-digit network fees quite frequently, and that is going to screw you over if you're trying to get a coffee with some Bitcoin. So, it's maybe, again, bad decisions or bureaucracy that takes a while to pass. It's happened at a point where the country maybe could work much better. Now we're at fucking single-digit sats per VB.
That's a good
actually
point.
Use a legal tender.
That's a very good point.
I do. Yeah, harking back to our previous episode, I really do hope that we continue to get good developments in the Lightning Layer 2 network, as it seemed that things had been going pretty well as of recent. So maybe we'll start to see some changes there with user friendliness and integrations. But yeah,
100%.
With that said,
yeah, and I think what people don't realize too, Snoop makes a really good point. Like globally, if people are tied into crypto, do you know what one of the number one trades in the world is going from their local currency, what they're buying? I'll bet Snoop knows.
Not stablecoins.
Honestly,
they're buying US. They're buying Tether on Tron.
Yeah,
because it's super cheap.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, because it's not like they love Justin Sun. It's because it's super cheap. And we first world countries are like Bitcoin. It's first. It's best. It's the most decentralized. It's gold. It's like but like Snoop said, when Sats per VB is 1. Trade away and you can save in Bitcoin if you're third world and you're just making a couple dollars at a time. Otherwise, your stable is the US dollar because it's way more stable than your local currency most likely. So it's just interesting because it's a perspective obviously that those of us in this room and most of us that we know don't have, but there's a very good reason why, because it's super cheap to get in and out of. It's a fast transaction. So it's the network that they're using.
Totally. And if you think about it, some of those people really can't or don't want to tolerate that volatility, and they need a role for some sort of stable coin to bridge the gap. And I heard an interesting take a while ago. I forget who it was. It might have been Novogratz who was kind of saying that Bitcoin is going to coexist with fiat payment rails for stablecoins like that. They're not competitors. They don't have to defeat one another. I really see a role for both, and so it's good to have a savings technology for people to kind of have something to look forward to and build a future, but also something to just keep stable and have for daily payments. So case in point, I think what you just said.
No, it's a good point. Before we transition, here's like a palate cleanser, but this is if you're wondering where the quality of audience and content is. We live stream this on YouTube just because I'm too lazy to post it later in YouTube, so I just get it up there. But Cash Bandit says, that's wild. Hold on. That's wild. Let her drink on the weekends. She has no kids, so mind your own business. Like, what? Or just wackadoos. But our YouTube comments are always this insanely irrelevant, and I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Sorry, Snoop.
I think he was just in the wrong chat at the wrong time.
No, I think he took the episode very seriously, and he put in a couple of shrooms, as he should.
There you go.
Yeah.
I love that.
What were you going to say, Snoop, before I so rudely interjected with nonsensical
No.
comments?
Moments past. It's okay. Onwards with the next.
I ruined a good punch.
Onward and forward. Hey, there will be plenty more. But yeah, so, okay, we've got number 700 here. This is called Gas Flaring Obsolator with 3 O's, not one. And it's a very peculiar shroom design. I mainly mean that in a good way. It's definitely unusual, but I like unusual. And what we have here looks like some sort of generator device that seems to be taking methane as your input and then chucking out Bitcoin on the other end. And I think the symbolism here, it's pretty straightforward. It's obviously not a very symmetrical or clean design, but that still somehow works in terms of what the piece is trying to accomplish. And in a weird way, it works for me, and I like it. How about you guys?
I mean, it's again, it's a striking shroom. It's not your standard shroom. I like what it stands for. I think we can dig into the lore in a moment. But yeah, I think we're always going to get unanimous. I love that shroom when we ask this question by everyone on the show. But yeah, it's an interesting one. And I do like the non-standard ones, but I am more partial to the shroom-shaped shrooms myself.
Yeah.
I love me the polarizing shrooms.
There we go.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool shroom. I always see shrooms as not just like they're not supposed to all be aesthetically pleasing. I think some shrooms show that more than others. I think what they're really supposed to do is like tell the story of Bitcoin, as we've spoken about many times. And I think this is one that like it does exactly what it's supposed to do. It shows exactly what this does. So I think this is still a really cool one, although it's like not aesthetically my favorite, I guess.
Yeah, I'm with Kenny and Snoop, but it's funny, the more I learn about him, and Snoop in our last show we talked a lot about like the PFP ability of shrooms versus like the art of shrooms, and I gotta say, going through this show, Rollo, and all you guys, like the more I appreciate this, like my son would love this one because he loves like energy conversion and just anything to do with that. And this one obviously is a process, but it's got the lightning bolt, which is super cool. I think those bees are really appealing. The arrows, I could take them or leave them, but again, Snoop Toshi or Shroom Toshi, sorry to give you an unnecessary compliment, Snoop, but Shroom Toshi was very good at with 8-bit graphics, like telling a story. Like there's no question as soon as we get into lore what this is.
Yeah, I totally agree. Masterful pixel placement and doing difficult things with very little to work with. I've always found very impressive. And like you said, Kenny, I think that was a great point. Some of the artwork is not necessarily visually aesthetically pleasing, and that may not always be the directive. And through the storytelling, that's where some of the beauty shines. And I again love that there's some pieces that just aren't going to be that pretty in the conventional way, but they are in others. And it just always fascinates me. But other point you made, it's got that classic orange Bitcoin logo, and sometimes we've seen a price premium of some of those others, and I don't know if that has the same effect here. But anyway, we can jump into lore time for this guy.
Yeah.
The Shroom Toshi description for this said, Bitcoin doesn't waste energy. It pays for wasted energy. And there's a link to bitcoinmagazine.com with an article focused on oil field alchemy and methane capturing. And it's a fun one. I happen to love what the shroom stands for once you actually do the digging. The link takes us to the northern plains of Canada. And something I did not know until recently is that Canada has an absolutely immense supply of natural gas. And they are the world's fifth largest producer of natural gas. In fact, I was not aware. Most production, it's actually concentrated in the western provinces, particularly Alberta, which is in British Columbia, as well as Saskatchewan. And some other interesting facts, it holds 73 trillion cubic feet of proven natural gas reserves with a vast potential of unconventional resources like shale gas and what's called tight gas. And so the United States actually they import over 90% of Canada's supply of natural gas via the pipelines. And you can see that little map there. Those are some of the main pipelines that exist. But anyway, more specifically in the context of Bitcoin mining, flare gas, which is also known as stranded gas, it's a byproduct of oil extraction, and it's often found in the crude oil fields where they go looking for liquid oil. And when crude oil gets extracted, the natural gas is conventionally released along with it. But in many cases, the gas either gets it's burned off or what's called flared, since there's no infrastructure to store or transport it, or two, it just gets vented directly into the atmosphere. And that's supposedly even more harmful because the direct methane emissions contribute to the global warming effect. And instead of wasting gas through either of those two means, the Bitcoin miners can actually capture that and use it as um, an energy source to power their mining rigs. And it's really incredible when you think about it. It basically turns what would otherwise be harmful emissions by using gas for productive purposes into something actually useful. And that provides miners with very cheap and abundant energy that would otherwise go completely unused. And you can think of it as literally free energy that they're using. And so, practically speaking, they can place those miners directly on site, get rid of any need for complex infrastructure, and just harvest the gas. And all in all, it turns wasteful gas emissions into a very productive natural resource, and that fully aligns with the whole proof of work mechanism, addressing some major environmental concerns at the same time. So, what do you guys think of that?
This is so cool. I mean, the fact that you just so my other co-hosts know, Rolo literally like before the show, like an hour before, I put all the different images in, and he has like 15 images of how like the shale sands in Canada work, and so I'm always
Got real
amazed,
nitty with
and
it.
I love these things. I'm gonna tell a little story. I was a geology major in college. I got a
Oh, I love
bachelor
that.
of science in geology. The running joke in my
Love
family
that.
is like, "Hey, Dad, what kind of rock is this?" I'm like, ignitrusive. I don't know. I wouldn't pay much attention, but I actually my senior year, second semester, I got an internship and I worked for an oil company in
No way.
Ohio, and my job was to go get all these. They had all this data for drill samples and all these maps, and there's a certain
Wow.
permeable layer. So if you look at that gray layer, there's like a permeable layer or an unpermeable layer that traps all the oil with usually under it. So you knew if you found these certain shale sands that underneath would be the oil, and
Right.
it's all different heights throughout the state. So they basically, I walk in, the president's like, "Hey, you're going to get an A regardless for your credit for your class, but just do as many as you can in the 4 months." And I had to drive to Columbus, then go back to my school, which was like 50 minutes away. And I think I went once. I'm like, this is boring. Like the idiot, he gave me the carrot and then he gave me the whole bag. And then he's like, because I knew I didn't want to be a geologist. I didn't want to go into the oil business for
Right.
sure. So
He didn't drip feed you.
I was like, thanks for the A. See ya. I'm out of here. And I actually, my second semester senior is probably when I ingested the most amount of mushrooms I have in my entire life. So they're it's give and take. It's give and take.
That is wild, dude. I never knew that about your background, and really adds some color here. I love that.
Yeah,
It's
this is
you know
an interesting one. I think is
yeah,
as far as the law goes as well. I mean, sort of having methane going in and having Bitcoin coming out at a time where
right.
you remember a couple of years ago how strong the narrative was of how harmful Bitcoin was and how energy consuming it was and how we shouldn't be mining Bitcoin and proof of work was going to end the world and use up all of our electricity and blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to see sort of all of these mining, these nods to geothermal, to being able to sort of replace harmful emissions with digital gold, all of these things with this sort of Shrimtoshi showing, millions of reasons why you should do this rather than the millions of reasons why you shouldn't do this, which is what everyone else was trying to convey at the time. So
Absolutely.
I like it. Well, again, aesthetically not my favorite sort of symmetrical style shroom. It is still, I think, another very powerful, proof of work and proof of thought, environmental thought. I think it's a nice thing.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Snoop or Blue, I was going to say, maybe the Bitcoin rocks really speak to you. I had no idea it went that deep, but
Bitcoin rocks do not speak to me. I would never, ever, ever buy a Bitcoin rock. I just want to make that. I want to make that perfectly clear. I have no desire, nor will I ever buy a copy pasta Bitcoin rock.
I'm so glad we got that out of the way. But to your point, Snoop, I was going to say, like it or not, I think it's a great point. It's incredibly important to consider that, when debating Bitcoin's environmental impact, many political figures who don't fully understand those dynamics will completely ignore or downplay, things like this that exist. And, critics more often than not, they completely ignore that mining rigs usually subsist on renewable energy, things like hydro, wind, solar, whatever it is. And, there's more nuance to Bitcoin's energy use than I think critics care to acknowledge. So I think you made a really good point there. It's just a lot more nuanced than that. But yeah, before we move on, I figured I would just throw in some interesting additional points there that were found in this article. And one of those was that this stranded gas that we talk about, I think accounts for somewhere between 40 to 60% of all of the world's proven gas reserve. So there is a lot of it to potentially tap into.
Isn't that crazy? 40 to 60% does not get used. So basically, your research was awesome. All those oil fields, because a lot of times they'll grab the oil and the gas is almost that pressure byproduct that they have to release. And that's completely, if you want to talk about like whether you believe in environmental issues or not, methane and gas releases is a big one, right? It's a huge one. Totally. And this captures it. I mean, it's better to be captured and turned to energy than it is to let it just go into the atmosphere.
No, totally. Go ahead, Snoop.
So I was going to say solar panels are about 20% efficient. So it is not something we're too alien. There is obviously a lot of wasted energy going out there that we don't know how to fully capture, no matter what the source.
Right.
You said solar panels are 20% efficient?
Yeah.
And I think that's like max too. Like they're just getting to 20, right? Like we got a long way to go there. We need like Dyson spheres to capture the sun.
Yeah, I've heard similar figures, and some folks are saying, with the advent of AI and even quantum computer technology coming into the discussion, like maybe in 10 or 20 years, that will change. We'll be sort of making things a lot more efficient than they already are, at least when it comes to solar energy. But like you were saying earlier, Blue, as far as the large supply of gas that just gets emitted, there was a really illustrative figure that they shared in the article, which was that in the U.S. alone in 2013, just 2013 and not now, oil companies vented or flared something like 122 billion cubic feet of stranded natural gas. And to really underscore that point, they said that that's enough to power every home in Chicago for an entire year in just 1 year alone in just one country. And again, keep that in mind. It was over a decade ago, and it's hard to know what it is now that we have an even larger, population and energy needs. So it's really cool that we're kind of doing this. But yeah,
I'm trying to pull up all your awesome pictures and just making sure I didn't miss any like really good ones. But yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. Like energy is such a Like it's kind of been turned into like a dirty word. Obviously coal is a lot dirtier
Sure.
than the natural gas, and some things burn cleaner than others, but like Snoop said, like
Right.
renewables, yeah, let's keep building those up. But even windmills, like when I drive from Chicago to Indianapolis, there's a wind farm about an hour outside of Indianapolis, and a lot of times the wind is blowing, and a lot of those things aren't working. And from what I hear from
Hmm.
migrating birds, like those things just get lopped out of the sky. Like so, there, it's not like everything's got its trade-offs, and like we want to explore all energy, and especially with nuclear fusion, right? I know my son's getting big into
Yeah.
that, but even looking at nuclear power again with these smaller, there's a whole new push for these smaller plants that can be built modularly, then put on site, so they're not these
Right.
massive silos that you see all over the place. But I think they're going to revisit that, because I think what we're going to find too is that nuclear was kind of the perfection that had to be poured, like the concrete had to be within, I think, a quarter, an eighth of an inch, like for an entire
Extremely tight
facility.
standards.
And
Yes.
the oil lobby was like, let's make it a little more impossible to pour this, and some of the
Hmm.
stuff just didn't make sense at all. So I think an abundant culture is an energy, like we've learned that energy hoarding is like bad and for the environment, and some of that may be true, and we have to figure stuff out. But a high use energy culture is a more advancing civilization. It's as simple as that. So we want to
Yes.
keep it clean,
Yes.
and Bitcoin, helps solve some of these caps, and gets a lot of shit out of the air. It's a win-win.
I think that is, yeah, a really salient point, and it makes you really think about how the people who control the energy in this world, the oil barons of the world, those folks who are in control, really have, the power and the leverage here. And like you said, you could kind of understand why some of these industries would have vested interest for other forms of energy not to really succeed. And I did some reading about that too with the nuclear subject matter, and
Mm-hmm.
it is really interesting. We have all this untapped nuclear power that we've not really uh, spent a lot of time and money working on. And I think it's unfortunate that there's a lot of stigma around it. Congress and the Senate have gotten really, really, I think, kind of touchy with the subject because of global events that have happened in the past, like Chernobyl and Fukushima Daiichi. That that really bittered, I think, the the palatability of nuclear energy in many people's minds, and we really haven't made much progress with it since. But like you said, we the hot topic nowadays is that of going more towards microgrids and making smaller, safer, scalable,
Yeah.
smaller nuclear power plants that you can use to power an entire city. And hopefully it will go in that direction, and we'll continue to fund it. But it's a tough subject because so much red tape goes around building a nuclear facility. It's a difficult thing to do, but it's very possible, and technology has only gotten better. So
Yeah. Is this this is the windmill one. I was going to say it's a perfect segue into the whole load balancer stuff.
right.
But, basically fuel underground or money, everything we're learning through Bitcoin, it's energy. Everything is
Hmm.
energy, and Bitcoin is energy stored. It's basically turning real energy, whether it's our work, whether it's oil under the ground, or whether it's fuel, it turns it back into potential savings and energy for the future. And it's the first time we've had an asset that actually, I don't want to call it, I don't know if it's deflationary, but it's certainly not
Hmm.
inflationary, and it appreciates over time.
Man, that was when I had literally my first aha moment with kind of what Bitcoin's one of Bitcoin's major value adds was, or at least what it's quote unquote backed by. When people ask you that tough question, what is Bitcoin backed by? It's really backed by nothing. It's just ones and zeros. Well, when you actually think about it, Bitcoin is the largest decentralized network backed by the largest electricity grid in the entire world. Because it's so difficult to make a single Bitcoin, you have to spend electrical energy to make it. It's hard to make And that entire network, the propagation of the entire network, relies on all the miners to continue, forming that electricity grid. And all of that goes into backing its security. And so that, it's one of the most secure forms of digitally stored value that you could possibly imagine for that reason. So that I use that essentially that logic to explain that to people nowadays. And it seems to have been a little bit more of a digestible kind of analogy. But yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So we
Again,
can go ahead.
So I was going to say, these ultimately, these are just ways that Shintoshi is showing, this
Yeah,
isn't a drain on this planet's resources in any way, shape, or form. Any way you want to look at this, any argument you have against Bitcoin
right.
being stable, throw out an argument and we'll counter it with a not only a solution but something that's probably even going to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
So I think that's, again, I like these energy themed shrooms.
Totally. It's almost like until you can prove to us that the world is truly strapped for energy sources to tap into, you can't really make that argument that Bitcoin is going to hog all of the world's resources in future time. It doesn't pan out that way. And if you actually look and dig a little deeper, you'll see how. And this is one of the reasons I love these shrooms is because it really does shed light on that, and you actually learn a little bit about its role in the energy economy. But with that said, we could segue into number 685, which is Grid Balancer, and it's a great little shroom here. Another beauty where I think symmetry just doesn't really matter. I sort of think of this shroom as an even cleaner, prettier version of the one that just preceded it. It's got the beautiful signature Bitcoin colorway, the logo. It works with the grays, the blacks, the orange. I love the unique pixelated artwork here. Really nice depiction of a windmill powered Bitcoin mining op. So it's an A+ for me. Do you guys like this one?
Yep, love this one. This one's a really cool one. I think the windmill really hit the spot, even though again, super low amount of pixels to work with, but absolutely nailed it.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not 100% sure on the back end of it, like the plug. Maybe there could have been something a little bit better on the box, maybe without the orange surround of the Bitcoin logo, but still, all in all, really cool shroom.
Yeah, no more I could add to that. I mean, so it's another nice, unique, non-standard shroom.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
For
think
all,
this one serves as a good segue, Rolo, to
yeah,
going from energy mining, energy capture to another way that Bitcoin makes and Bitcoin mining actually helps with the energy grid. Like you said, think about what
right,
we
right.
knew before Bitcoin happened. Like, did we know about von Mises and the
Hmm.
Austrians? Did we know about
Right.
Keynes, and like, did we know all these monetary theories? But also, did we really understand our relationship to energy? And I would argue no. But yeah, tell us
For me,
why
not at
this
all.
one. Yeah, tell us why this one is so significant. Like I said, I loved reading your notes because I knew some
Yeah.
of this stuff, but you're really good at tying all this together.
Hey, thanks. I completely resonate with that. I mean, for me, not at all. Like I said, I would have never really been thinking about these things had it not been for Bitcoin kind of catalyzing those thought experiments, like you said. But yeah, totally. This shroom, it's a lovely one because of what it represents. And Shroomtoshi's description for it said, "I will let the amazing at Lynn Alden contact explain this one." And again, another really awesome Shroom reference. Pleased to see that Shroomtoshi makes a permanently inscribed public nod to none other than, as he puts it, the amazing Lynn Alden. And to set the stage for this piece would would probably benefit from telling the audience who Lynn Alden is. And she's a highly respected investment strategist. She's known for her in depth analysis of macroeconomics, financial markets, investment strategies. She's been very well known for detailed research on Bitcoin's role in global finance, particularly as a store of value. And I didn't know this, but she actually holds a degree in electrical engineering, which is part of what allows her to combine technical knowledge with the financial expertise that she displays when it comes to this particular subject. And Lynn has frequently contributed to financial publications. She's featured on podcasts, interviews, all sorts of live conferences on monetary policy and digital assets. So, with that being said, she has also discussed how Bitcoin mining can enhance electrical grid stability, particularly when integrated with renewable energy resources like wind power. And so she pointed out that in regions with substantial wind energy production, the electricity supply can actually become consistent or inconsistent at times due to just the variable nature of wind. And that sort of dynamic intermittency can lead to periods of both surplus as well as deficit when it comes to power generation. And so, Bitcoin offers this flexible demand response as a solution to that challenge. And miners can essentially adjust their operations based on the availability or lack thereof of energy. And that boils down to two sort of modalities, if you could imagine. And one is during surplus, or in other words, when wind energy production exceeds consumer demand, the miners can increase their activity and consume any of that surplus electricity. And that not only prevents waste, but it provides an additional revenue stream to the energy producers and thereby improves their economics for renewable energy product delivery. But during deficits, which is the other modality, or when wind energy production is very low, like during the nighttime, and energy demand surpasses the supply, the miners can swiftly reduce or halt their operations and basically free up that electricity for people of the city to use. And that sort of rapid adjustability is what helps maintain grid stability without the need for any significant infrastructural changes. So it's literally like a plug and play, kind of a efficiency producer. And I just think that's really cool. I never really put much thought to that until now.
I think also they get very good rates on the electricity as well, given sort of that
Yes.
availability to scale up and down. I remember talking to a mining fund some years ago, I forget where they had it, somewhere in the States, but effectively they had a great deal where, whenever this small
Right.
town needed that electricity, they could just go to town. Then whenever they did, they could just wind it back down. And yeah, maybe that's what the plug's for, so you can share that juice.
Plug in, unplug.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really difficult to, if you're providing energy, it's, windmills obviously is just one of them, but even with
Right.
coal, with oil, with natural gas, like natural gas is probably one of the easier ones, but it's hard if you're going to give a lot of energy during the day for businesses and stuff, and then when it goes down at night, or in hot weather with air conditioners and stuff where it's just cranking, it's hard to
Right.
sometimes know what that demand is going to be, and to go up and down really efficiently and
Yeah.
fast is super difficult. So, obviously for, how awesome would that be if in the Midwest, ComEd's are the biggest one, but I know different parts of the world have different kind of monopolies for the energy companies. But, if we could ever kind of more make that a public good utility, and that money, that Bitcoin could help make the costs cheaper, like it should
Right.
bring that load balancing could grossly bring down our costs, because they, especially in a
Yes.
super hot days, they have to always gear towards peak capacity. They can't like find this lower median. It always has to be at
Right.
peak. So much gets
Right.
wasted. So the load balancing is absolutely huge. If we can start to chip away at these monopolies to actually serve the people and share it for the people, which kind of was the whole intent to begin with.
Yeah, 100%. I think hit the nail right on the head. There was a really good Al Jazeera article that I found along the way that literally underscored that. Because they were talking about one of these startups. I think it was Layer One, which is backed by Peter Thiel. That company was citing figures of up to 700% on returns for the renewable energy that they were utilizing solely, well, not solely, but largely in part due to the load balancing from integrating Bitcoin miners. So they were able to extract a lot more revenue than they otherwise would have left off the table. Like you said, there's a lot of frank waste, and so this is just one of those ways, one of several, to tighten up that efficiency of their operations. And on one hand, there are barriers that exist now, like you've got these highly competitive markets in states like California and Texas, where the customer usage and the grid data almost gets protected because the companies have these vested interests. And then on the other, you have things like the Bitcoin miners we just mentioned, but there's also improvements in battery technology. Smart meters are getting better. AI is starting to help. And to that point you made about them being able to adjust quickly to dynamic market prices, that's kind of where the secret sauce is. And if you solve that, you are leaving less and less money off the table, or on the table, I should say. And it's getting better with time, but there have been all of these historical obstacles. But yeah, it's a fascinating topic, and I love thinking about it. So we can move on to our next one here. Um, we've got. You guys want to do the next piece?
Yeah, happy to introduce this one because this one,
Please.
as we've spoken before, we have a couple of UFOs, unidentified fungal objects, and
Yes.
as we've mentioned before, Shrimtoshi kind of didn't give a couple of shrooms a name on purpose. We are not exactly sure why he did so, but we think that he left it open for us to interpret it, the meaning behind these shrooms. So
Right.
whatever we say to these unidentified fungal objects is only one of our thoughts onto these things. But if you have a different thought and you think this might reference something different within Bitcoin, then I think it would be really cool if you guys let us know, dropped something in the comments. So yeah, with this one, I believe this might be referencing Brains. Brains is a company, and I believe this brain um, kind of kind of kind of suits that, right? Do you want to go into the details of this one, Rollo?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, I think it's a really cool one. It's a very visually striking shroom. I believe it's sold on the market before. I'm personally a fan of the design. I love the symmetry. It's very bold. It's one of the larger shroom pieces, I think, in the collection. And um, I did want to quickly just turn to our audience here and just ask that you guys let us know what you think of these pieces. If you are a fan or if you dislike it, give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. We're going to be giving away a piece of merch at the end of the discussion, and we've got a shroom tote bag for today that you can win. But we're going to be handing it out to folks who participate and can give us a little reshare to get us out into the ether. So let us know what you think. You know, we talk about the shrooms up here, but we'd also love to see what our holders and our fans think of these pieces. I'm just always curious. But yeah, so with this shroom, Kenny, I think you were onto something there. Shroomtoshi was likely referring to a mining company that has now assumed the name of Brains, spelled Brains, and they pivoted. They used to be something called the Slush Pool, which was actually the world's first mining pool in existence. So it's this one I think is a cool historical nod to one of Bitcoin's first mining pool operations in existence. And you can find them. They have a website that's now or still operational, and they've been operating in the background, full steam without any issues to my knowledge. They're one of the longest running successful Bitcoin mining pool operations in the space. But he left a description there. I think it said probably the only Bitcoiners who can afford to rebrand without eliciting suspects of shitcoinery at Brains Mining Rip Slush Pool. And so I think that's probably the tongue-in-cheek reference to the pivot there. And it's just funny because typically I think altcoins are kind of associated with, they get that bad rap for whenever they're kind of failing or just not really gaining much traction. They pivot and they rebrand and they just change the ticker, they change the logo, and really nothing under the hood has changed. It's just the same old crap. And so that's why I think he makes that joke there at shitcoinery, because it really does raise the eyebrows and make you think, okay, why'd you change your name all of a sudden if you had a good thing going? So anyway, what is Brains and what is Slush Pool? Again, like I said, it's one of the oldest mining pools. I think it was started in 2010. There was a Czech programmer by the name of Marek Slush Palatinus, and he founded this thing, and it was originally, like I said, called the Slush Pool. I don't know why he was called Slush, but maybe we can find out. But prior to that, Bitcoin mining had always been done solo, and that literally meant that miners competed individually to solve the blocks and earn rewards. And the whole concept of mining in a pool, was introduced by them. And as we outlined in the last episode, pooling is what essentially allowed miners to combine their computational power to increase the probability of successfully finding a Bitcoin block, and while also sharing the rewards proportionally to everybody who's participating. And it became harder and harder to do that because as newer hardware emerged and more sophisticated, larger players came in with industrial mining companies, that the little guy had a much harder time generating any revenue at any scalable level. So pools are how people banded together and solved this problem. And it's really incredible, actually, when you think about it. The whole idea of people working together under a game theory and incentive. So I don't know if you guys had any thoughts of that, whether you've interacted with Slush Pool before, mined with them on your own. Just curious on your guys' thoughts there.
No, never personally mined with Slush Pool. Back
Yeah.
that long ago. And yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I hadn't actually read the description. I'd gone down a complete other rabbit hole with what I thought that shroom meant. But having
I know.
I now
Right.
See that makes more sense of where I was going.
Yeah.
But I like to look at that shroom like, well, what's a mushroom's brain? It's a mycelial network. And what's Bitcoin? It's a decentralized network. Both operate with nodes.
Right.
And I felt that was a nice kind of analogy for a shroom brain and this decentralized network that is Bitcoin. It's very weird, I know, but I've always kind of thought that was
I like that.
That's very mycelial. I 100% agree with you. It's a good take.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I thought it was something totally different at the beginning. I always just thought he was making a reference at, like, there's this meme that circulates around with like I forget I think it's like the Wojak that has like the large brain that just kind of like wraps around his entire body, and I was like, big brain move or something like that. I had no idea, but I thought maybe that's what this was getting at. Like big brain. Own a shroom, that's a big brain move.
Yeah, I never used this one either. I mined briefly in 2017. Yeah, I think 2017, and we used Ant Pool, which had been much bigger at the time. So it's kind of cool to see. Obviously, I wasn't around in 2010, but what I loved about learning about these guys is there was a lot of Bitcoin was great, but in mining there was a lot of ways to game that system, and it sounds like this guy really figured out ways to make it more decentralized and more egalitarian, so the big guys couldn't be doing these shady, like off block deals to shove in transactions and stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And in fact, they had maintained a really good reputation for transparency and fair reward distribution. So they were known for being very principled, like you said, and that was, I think, what kind of allowed them to be as successful as they were. And they popularized this score-based reward system that was one of the mining pool strategies, of which is now one of many. But like you said, this prevented bad behavior, and something that people would do was known as mining pool hopping, where if they were not getting any good profit from the pool that they were currently with, they would just switch to something else until they got a reward. And this discouraged that and made it, very, very fair for the people who were participating. So, um, other cool things they did. I think in 2013, the team behind the slush pool co-founded that Brain company. It was an entirely different spinoff originally, and they were a full stack software company, and they released the Brains OS, which was geared towards mining. And at a certain point, I think it was in 2021, they basically just decided, let's just rebrand. The Brains company absorbed slush pool, and they renamed. But I think fortunately in this case, it's good that with that pivot, nothing really changed. They were a great service the whole time, and still to this day they operate. It's interesting. They're not, like you mentioned. You mentioned Antpool, and Antpool is still one of the largest mining pools in existence. I think the statistics were pretty interesting. Let me see if I can find them. Yes, Antpool. They're around 167 exahash per second, or 25% of the entire Bitcoin network hash rate.
What were they, 27%?
It might be. It says 25 here.
25. Foundry's even more, isn't it?
Let's see. Foundry's 28%, which is pretty insane when you think about it. So there's really, like, I think it's a handful of 4 to 5 large pools that control the entire hash rate. That has implications, and in the next room we're going to get even deeper into that and why that matters. But Brains is really just 1.2% of the entire network hash rate. I think 8.4 exahashes a second.
Yeah, and it just shows you that Shroomtoshi, like, he's been around a long time. Like, if you want to try and figure out who he is, which we don't or care, but it just shows how much of an OG the guy is. He either did a ton of research the second KC tipped him off to ordinals, and did a ton of research all through, what was that, 2022 or whatever, the year before it came out, or he already knew a lot of this stuff. I suspect,
or he was around.
Yeah, I suspect the latter, and this guy is just a complete stud.
I think I'm with you there. It really does speak to his breadth of knowledge, however he acquired it. And I think it's still, again, very cool. They've been around for so long. It's a nice piece of history, a great reference, and they were around for some of the largest moments in Bitcoin's history. Like, they mined blocks that included some of the major technological upgrades like SegWit, various historic price milestones. So it's a very cool and relevant company, and for that I very much like this room. So
yeah, for sure. And Crypto Knight TX, thanks for reaching out. And he is, or she is, currently mining on Brains, so that's awesome.
Oh, I love that.
Big homage to Brains. It's cool to find someone out there who's doing it. So Crypto Knight, thanks for watching the show, and B, thanks for sharing that. That's super cool.
Super cool.
Shall we?
And with that said, let's we directly roll into our next room, which is a very appropriate topic, as mentioned. Ordinal number 686 is called Stratum V2. I see this room. I don't know about you guys, but I think the first thing I think of is Tron.
Yeah.
I think you got to love that futuristic kind of neon aesthetic. I'm a fan. I think it's a really visually striking shroom, maybe even more so than the one we just did. But it's got a really large form factor, kind of like I alluded to with the last one. Very symmetric, very clean, attractive colorway. It's a for me. How about you guys? Yeah, thumbs up.
I definitely like this one as well. Really good.
Yeah, it's a nice piece. What do you guys think out there? Give us a thumbs up or down.
I do get that feeling of Tron, that nice retro cyberpunk sort of vibe to it. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a cool piece, but there's some very neat factoids beneath it. The description that Shrimtoshi kindly left for us says a proof of honesty for pool operators that prevents out-of-band bribes, hash rate hijacking, and empty blocks. V2 stands for very cool squared. And there's a link there that takes you to a Deribit research article that delves into exactly what Stratum v2 was and why it really mattered. And it's a great article if you do get a chance to click it and go into it. It's not very long, but it really outlines what was at stake for the whole Bitcoin network and why this actually was a very important technological update, especially when it comes to mining. So, what is Stratum v2 then? To begin with, the first Stratum protocol, there was a v1. It was arguably one of the most important tools in streamlining pooled mining operations. And that first one came out in 2012. And it was actually by none other than Slush, the same guy who founded the Slush pool, if you remember the brainstorm we just did. And so the Stratum v1, it provided a standardized way for mining pools to communicate with their miners, and it was essentially adopted by almost every major pool in the network. And in that initial form, pooled mining, what it basically did was divided the task of mining between two main groups. And one was the pool operators, or the people who would run the servers to coordinate everybody. And two was the actual miners, the people who would plug in their mining hardware and do the hard work. And in a nutshell, the previous mining pool model with V1 depended on a transaction sequencer that would orchestrate the group of miners. And what I mean by that is if you pause to think about it, you need some kind of software protocol that can coordinate all of the random individual participants who are kind of coming online and offline into this mining pool. You've got a bunch of people participating. For example, how would anybody know what the order of operations is, for hashing when you've got all these different mining machines coming on and offline all the time? What's the order of operations, and how does software define that? And mining, pooled mining, is a coordinated effort that actually has to have some sequence to it, because if you understand under the hood, what cryptographic hashing is, there's a logic and an order to it, and it's math. And so, to me, explaining the Stratum protocol, although it's a little bit difficult, it is like explaining how the sausage is made in that regard. And so, I guess before we go on, I just wanted to ask if you guys have ever, if you've mined before, have you seen that Stratum label somewhere? Because I remember, I used to do a little bit of Zcash mining. It was like back in 16, and I remember seeing that label. It said Stratum something something protocol, and I was like, what the hell is that? I don't care. And that was it. But yeah, I was just curious if you guys have heard of it before or knew anything about it.
I mean, I'd heard the name. I'd never really looked into it in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
I know the V1 and V2, but I think certainly, yeah, not something I'm overly familiar with. But I do remember
right.
the name.
Same.
Well,
Yeah.
the cool thing too is like, I'm with Snoop. I mined later, and that wasn't even on my radar. But all of these
Yeah.
other miners and the way that all of this comes together to help these pools and stuff, like it came from somewhere, and these guys were the revolutionaries, and a lot of them you've heard of, and the logo, obviously it looks familiar to us, but
Right.
a lot of us in here have been around for a little while at least, and even to us it's like, yeah, I've heard of it, but it when you dig in, it just makes you realize, like, even Bitcoin, after it came out in 2008, 2009, how you keep building on the backs of these coders and these builders to make it better and to make it more fair and
Yeah.
decentralized, and we already have concentration, especially of these pools. But it'd be way worse if we didn't have companies like Stratum.
Yeah. Really well put. Because I felt the same way when I did a little digging on this and learned what's kind of under the hood. It made me feel pretty humbled. Like, we've been in this space for such a long time, and I was completely unaware of how much deeper this actually goes. And like you said, it's all been built on the back of a lot of hard work and prior knowledge that these coders and developers have put forward, and it's crazy. You look more and more, and you just keep on finding, and you realize how many moving pieces there are here, and how sophisticated it
Right.
really is. And it's a really beautiful thing. It's like a fine timepiece that just works in mysterious ways. But so back to outlining the problem, I guess Shroom Toshi's description had mentioned all of these issues that nefarious mining pools could kind of bring about to its participants. And one major problem with the first Stratum protocol was that it centralized control over transaction order by assigning that control to the pool operators rather than the miners. And you might ask, okay, well, why is that a problem? Well, the mining industry, it's inherently a very oligopolistic one, as we just saw in the last room. I think we talked about there being really like 4 or 5 dominant mining pools that have all of the hashing power on the network. And that is a little bit of a scary fact when you think about it, but it's mitigated by what these guys eventually did with this protocol update. So you've got all this hashing power that's concentrated in these 4 or 5 bodies. However, they're decentralized pools in and of themselves that are made of all these different constituents. But the problem was, in the past, the power dynamic was geared towards just those 1 or 2 people who were the pool operators running those pools. And what this did, the later software update, the V2, restored that control. It allowed the miners to actually select the transaction order rather than the people at the top running the pools. And it was a significant reason. Yeah. And so a smaller number, it's an inherent risk to network decentralization, but again, they solved that. But again, you think about it, all the miners, they're putting up the hardware, the electricity, the labor costs, and the pool operators, they've got to spin up a server and distribute the profits. So it really just wasn't fair. And you know, Shuntoshi again alluded to that problem, and the old protocol again allowed for other nefarious pool activities. There was something known as out-of-band payments, and again, hash rate hijacking and empty block mining. I was like, I have no idea what any of that jargon means, but let's find out. One with out-of-band payments, a pool would receive a bribe-like compensation for choosing to include a transaction in a block, and basically that bribe, it would be paid out outside of Bitcoin's protocol. So, like a private cash payment from a bank or something like that. And when used in a certain way, for some users that actually could have been a good thing. Like if you didn't put enough, let's say, gas fees, or you didn't set the transaction fee high enough and your transaction failed, you could do an out of network payment and get your transaction accelerated. Not necessarily a huge problem in and of itself, but then when abused, it could get way out of hand. And I think Binance was maybe one example. You could have these long-term contracts where a corporation is essentially making these ongoing payments for controlling how the network might order transactions, and that has a lot of implications for how things are working. And um, that just was, it made for a very difficult system to audit. Like you couldn't track where those payments were going, and it also was an avenue for the mining pool operators to just not share that extra revenue with any of the miners. So it was problematic. But the next major one was hash rate hijacking, and this one's kind of cool. With the old protocol, the communication between miners and the pool operator, it was actually not encrypted. And so what that meant was literally a person could eavesdrop and steal a miner's work submission that they submit to the pool and literally present it to the pool and get paid for it. So you could just see what the cryptographic proofs were and just hijack it. So that's why it was called that. But the last one was called empty block mining, and this one took me, yeah, I got to admit, I think it took a few rereads to understand it, and I'm not even going to bother to attempt fully explaining it. But for the purposes of keeping it simple, in that old model, there was no disincentive for Bitcoin miners to solve empty blocks and put no transactions in it and basically just reap the Bitcoin reward, like the minted Bitcoin, because in the early days, Bitcoin's reward for block discovery, I think was like, 50 Bitcoins, 25 Bitcoins, and transaction fees were basically minimal because there was not that much volume. But over time, transaction fees have gone further and further up, and that equation has changed quite a bit. But even still, right before Stratum V2 came online, every week, reliably, about 3 to 4 times, there was an empty block that would get mined. And you might say, okay, well, why does that matter? Well, imagine trying to get your transaction approved. You want to send a payment to a friend, and then you got to wait 10 or 20 minutes for some random block to just solve, which is completely empty. That's pretty annoying, and it's also not very efficient when you consider all the energy that we just talked about is going
Yeah.
into this system. That's the problem, and basically it all boiled down to a small protocol update where there was some latency issue, uh, in as far as it being more favorable to just mine an empty block because it could take time to download a full block, and this Stratum V2 solved for that. And long story short, TLDR, the Stratum V2 update fixed all these errors and made it a much more streamlined, energy efficient operation for Bitcoin miners and the pools. And so that is essentially, what it did. But very, very cool, technology. And before we move on to the last room, I was just going to point out one last thing, which this is more Easter egg territory. I thought this was really, really cool, though. It's in relation to Shroomtoshi's timing with inscribing this shroom and the whole history of the Stratum protocol. If you do a little bit of detective work and you see that Ordinal 686 was inscribed February 1st, 2023, and the initial development of Stratum started in 2019, and the article that Shroomtoshi referenced was in 2021. But the world's first Stratum V2 mining pool went live on November 28th, 2023, which was well after the Shroom was actually inscribed. So it was 9 months after Shrimtoshi, kind of referenced this article. And I think that means that Shrimtoshi was, keenly aware of Stratum's progress and was really excited enough by it or its future, implications to dedicate an entire shroom to it. And I just think it's really cool to know that it eventually came to fruition after the piece was inscribed. I think to me it speaks that shrooms have been woven into the fabric of Bitcoin's past, its present, and its future. And it also, reminds me of what an amazing job ST did in linking Bitcoin's distant past all the way to where we are now. And if you don't find that cool, I don't know what to tell you, man. Maybe you need skydiving or something. But yeah, just an interesting fact. But
Oh, we
That
got it. We
that
got a
is really
clean one next.
interesting.
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
yeah,
Yeah, I was just gonna say I didn't know that before, and I think that's really interesting that that you found that out, and I agree. I think shrooms do lie in the past, in the present, and in the future, and I think people don't consider the role that they will play in the future, and I think that we'll be finding a lot more like niche things where we think like, aha, Shroom Toshi kind of did predict all these different things. So I think that's really
right.
cool.
Yeah, totally. Their constructive value just goes unsaid.
Just an insane amount of research on that one. That's mind blowing. How deep you went down there, and yeah, I learned a huge amount. That was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
I appreciate it. I know it went a little deep there. That one was a little deeper than the others, but it was so. I was blown away. I was like, I feel like there has to be a way to kind of unpack this somehow. But thank you. And if you're out there somewhere, Shrimtoshi, I hope you're proud that Bitcoin did go on to become a fair bit more decentralized since we last spoke. So cheers to you. But we can go ahead and move on. We have I think our second to last piece here, Ordinal 708, Parallelny Polis. And this one, it's a fair bit simple compared to others in the collection. Barebone black and white design. Love a clean classic shroom. I think the only knock I would give it, because I have this mild OCD trait or something, is just that incomplete gap in the triangle bottom left. I couldn't tell you why, but for whatever reason, drives me nuts. Some will like it. I just think it drives my OCD up the wall. But for that, I can only give it a B plus. But what do we think of this one?
I mean, I love these kind of shroom. The standard shroom, the fewer the colors, the better. I really like.
Yeah,
There are two shrooms
totally.
I think that in my top. Obviously, my babies, but other than them, the skull shroom that I'm looking forward to covering at some point, and this
That's
one
a
I
beauty.
think, yeah, just the black and white, the contrasting aspects of it, how simple they are. I rate them highly.
Simplicity is underrated.
I feel like it belongs in a game.
Yeah.
Squid Game.
Oh, that's I didn't make that connection.
Yeah, I think
forget
the
when
simple
Squid Game
ones
came
are
out.
often some of the best ones for sure. I didn't hear what your critique of it was. Is it just because there's a shadow, it's a little lopsided or something?
It's just I've got this little mild OCD trait, I think, and like that little gap in the bottom left, it fucking drives me nuts for some reason. I couldn't tell you why, and it's nothing rational,
I
but
don't
that's
even
just
see
mine.
it. I don't even see it.
The little, the triangle there, bottom left, doesn't complete
Oh,
the
that it's
Oh,
not closed.
the gap.
I assume that's the
Yeah,
logo. That
it's
doesn't
probably the logo. Yeah, right.
that
It's
doesn't
just a
bother me
personal
at
thing.
all.
Right.
And what do you think,
That's my
Kenny?
problem.
Yeah, I think this one's dope. I like what it stands for. Really cool. We're gonna get into that in a second, and yeah, I mean, I love the clean ones. I gotta say, the clean ones. I mean, Ski God is probably like the biggest advocate of the like super clean ones, where it's literally just the head, one, two, three, maybe three colors. I personally like. Yeah, there he is. I personally do like the ones
Shout out
where
to you,
there is
bud.
like a little bit of extra added. But I still really like this one. This one's obviously still super cool, super clean, and yeah, I like what it stands for.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it
Yeah,
is.
this one's pretty cool. So let's get into lore.
Yeah. This one, Shrimtoshi left a little description for us that said Middle European cypherpunks are alive and well at Parallelny Polis. Say that 5 times fast. Deconstructing the shroom, it requires a little bit of background before delving into exactly what Parallelny Polis is, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Shrimtoshi refers to Middle European cypherpunks, and so I had to ask what that was. And Middle Europa is actually a term that's used to refer to the historical region in the heart of Central Europe, which encompasses, I think, present day Czech Republic, Austria, Germany, Slovakia, Hungary, and Poland. And that region has a long history of intellectualism, political thought, and technological innovation. And I really didn't know that. But it has made it a fertile ground for the cypherpunk philosophy to thrive in today's digital age. And the cypherpunk movement, it's one that ties in greatly with Bitcoin history. The movement itself has championed the use of cryptography to achieve privacy and freedom from state control. And that philosophy, it actually predated Bitcoin, but it directly paved the way for the creation of Bitcoin by Satoshi. And so, with that said, parallel Parallelny Polis, excuse me, is a modern day embodiment of these ideals, and it functioned as an educational institution. And they host events like the Hackers Congress, one where Bitcoiners and privacy advocates converge to push forward the ethos of decentralization and freedom. And it is essentially a cultural and educational hub. It's based out of Prague, Czech Republic. It was founded in 2014 by an art collective called Stoven, and members of the Czech Bitcoin community. But the name itself, it actually translates to parallel city, and it symbolizes a parallel society built on decentralization, privacy, and digital freedom. So it was one of the first spaces in the world to accept Bitcoin exclusively for all transactions, whether it be the cafe, events, workshops, whatever. It was at the time a bold move, and again, they're known for these events that foster sort of crypto anarchism that exists in various places of the world. I think you can maybe remember Anarchapulco, I think, which is in Mexico, probably something similar to that, but over in Eastern Europe. And yeah, it's a pretty cool thing. I never knew about them. They are actually, unfortunately, sunsetting as of now. I think 2024 was their last conference, but what they are doing is they're transitioning into a more digital form. And then another organization is arising, I guess, in the spirit of it, called Second Culture, I believe it is. So interesting to see where that goes. But it's just nice to know that there are people who actually come together and talk about, the real, um, I think, fundamental principles of what this is all about. And it's important not to lose sight of that sometimes, especially with Wall Street and other folks coming into the scene and changing things up. So it's good these guys exist.
I love the PFP, Snoop. I love the change. Is that on
Hey,
Ordos? Oh wait, here, start talking. I want to hear. Does it actually move with your voice?
Yeah, it's voice responsive, so make some loud noises.
oh, that's super cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, we should use
I love
those
that.
on the show for Kenny and whoever's not visible, because I want to make it where you can see when Kenny's talking with the audio. Maybe that's a good way. That's cool. Yeah, this is another one I didn't know about. Kenny, I know you've done a ton of research. And obviously I'm in the U.S. Were these guys on your radar? Did you know about these guys?
Yeah, well, I kind of learned about them through the Bitcoin Shrooms. Unfortunately, I was supposed to go to Prague in December last year, and I actually wanted to
Oh,
go down there, but I unfortunately didn't manage to go. Like I had like private things, and then like my girlfriend didn't have the time to come, and it was kind of like we were gonna connect a couple of things there, so. Unfortunately, we didn't manage to go down there, but that's definitely still on my radar, and I really want to go down there hopefully this year. So that'll be really cool going down there, chatting a bit about Bitcoin, seeing what's up, and yeah, I'm super excited actually.
Yeah, very cool.
very cool.
And that's that building, and they're kind of not headquartered, it's a bad word, but they're in the Czech Republic.
Yeah, it's over in Czech Republic.
Yeah,
That is the venue.
Yeah, I went there for my honeymoon 20 years ago. That is such a great area and town, and Prague is so beautiful. That's awesome.
Yeah, I hear great things.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, with that, we have our last and maybe most legendary piece, arguably one that you could say, I don't know about started at all. We started with Sovereign Individual, but this is no less iconic. It is none other than Bitcoin Pizza Day, ordinal number 684. And I mean, I don't even know if it really needs much elaboration. Some designs you just don't even really need a technical breakdown.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree. It's safe to say most people love a good slice of pizza, and there's maybe nothing more iconic when it comes to Bitcoin pop culture. And yeah, what do you guys think of this little guy?
I mean,
oh,
I
this one,
have
yeah.
a lot of love for Bitcoin Pizza Day. One of my first forays with my wife in the Web3 space back in 2021, I consider Web3 NFTs, was Bitcoin, was Pizza DAO, Rare Pizzas, where we'd pull together.
Yeah, the pizza now.
Yeah, exactly. So that was something I put together with my team at Frogland and with Snacks. I was sort of involved in some
Love
of
that.
the legs of it. And yeah, we fed hundreds of thousands of dollars of pizza to 5 continents, 60 countries, all
That's
on
so
Bitcoin Pizza.
cool.
It was,
Wow.
it was the thing that really sold me on what this space has to offer compared to Web 2. So it was something that, yeah, I hold this near and dear to my heart, certainly.
Yeah, it seemed like that was no less so for Shintoshi. I think he reserved the shroom at a starting OTC price of 3 Bitcoin, and I remember asking about it. He was sentimentally reverent of this one, and that same floor price, as you might know, was the one that was reserved for the original proto shroom. So that should tell you how iconic this thing is, or was to him and others. And it was actually briefly listed. It was on an auction platform called Scarce.city. Shrimtoshi put it up as the first Bitcoin shroom that was to ever be sold. And I actually managed to grab a screenshot of that auction when it was live. I think the current bid had gone up to somewhere around, it was like 2.5 Bitcoin at the time. So really even close to what the asking price was, and the auction was not even finished. But that was around, I think it was February 23rd of 2023. And I was keeping tabs on it, and all of a sudden it just disappeared one day. And I later asked Toshi about it, and if I can recall correctly, it seemed like he had some sort of change of mind about selling it via the platform. I don't know what the exact specific reason was, but he had a change of mind and basically just decided to do it OTC. And the auction would have marked the first Bitcoin shroom ever sold, but ultimately that predated what was to later be the first 3 shrooms that sold on the Sotheby's listings that we went into in the first episode. And that was almost 10 months later, like in December of 2023. So this would have been it, but alas, just didn't pan out to be. But pretty cool market history.
Yeah, I was also watching at the time. I know Kenny was there too. I was bummed about it. Like I felt like a lot of people in the space were kind of like, dude, quit pump faking. Like just sell these things. I'm pretty sure
we were just so excited.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that when I don't know his reasons, but I know that the ordinals came out of the gate super hot in the end of January, early February, maybe into March. I don't know what the exact date of this is. I'm trying to look on there. I don't see it, but
that was February.
It was okay. So it was before things had died, but things did die pretty quick. So that spring and summer, especially the summer, were pretty dead with ordinals. Like it made this huge splash and then it kind of died. And then it really until that November, I think it was even December of 23 or whatever, when maybe around the time Node Monks launched, like ordinals was kind of quiet and dead for a while. I don't know if that was a part of it, but I was just bummed that we had to wait so long, but obviously it all worked out and paid off in the end. And he found a good window where ordinals was pumping, kind of on the tails of the Node Monk launch, which, I have no opinion of the launch except for that it did spur the market and it was a pretty successful launch, especially monetarily.
Totally. And I think that, that auction bid right there just tells you what that level of demand was. 2.5 Bitcoin was already on the table before the thing concluded. But in talking with Toshi here and there, it was definitely apparent that whatever his ideas of rollout were, he had some sort of plan that was well developed, and there was a method to his madness because he was pretty strategic about his overall philosophy of how he wanted to get them out. I remember, he mentioned he had given some to key figures in the space who had done things, just gifted them. Others he wanted to he had commented a few times, he wanted to get that distribution into the right people's hands, people who would truly value the pieces. And he cared a lot about, who ultimately did own these pieces. And I think that was pretty cool. It wasn't just like he was trying to make some Bitcoin and quickly get out of there. He really cared about who was going to have these pieces and who would love them. And, well, maybe not who would love them, but just who would have them. And so, yeah, there was a method to the madness. I don't know what all of the details were, of course, but it's always fascinating. And I think that this whole story here, it adds to the mystique and the intrigue behind the piece of room. So,
absolutely. I mean, the whole Laszlo story is like Snoop said, is so cool. I mean, 10,000 Bitcoin. Yeah. I mean, just a insane amount. What is that in today's dollars? It's a couple 100 million, or it's a lot, whatever it is. And
several hundreds.
Yeah, several hundred million. And but what a legend this guy was. Like, I'm complaining that my Trezor cost half a Bitcoin back in the day. Like, this guy spent $10,000 on $41 worth of pizza. 10,000 Bitcoin, that is. It's just crazy. And like you said, it's super iconic one. I like the like, if I had to pick the sovereign one, to me, it's the first one. It sums up everything.
Yes.
My association with pizza, like I like it, and I think it's an interesting story, and it just goes to show you how the price of Bitcoin, especially versus the dollar, has just appreciated, and it just keeps going up and up and up. If you go year by year by year. So it's so ingrained in our culture, like Snoop said. I didn't know that brought Snoop and his wife in. I think that's super cool.
Yeah. No, I had no idea either. It's very, very cool to see that one of us has a close tie to it, and so it makes it even more valuable. But maybe for a lot of people, it's a tale as old as time. I don't know if there are any folks who are out there that might not be so familiar with it, but we could outline it for our audience. Shrimtoshi had described for this guy Bitcoin's most delicious festivity, maybe just for Laszlo, it's slightly bitter, and then left the link to the Bitcoin Talk forum, which you have up there. That was the original post there, which I think has become a little bit of a legendary screenshot. And for Bitcoin Shrooms, we're discussing here one of the most iconic and historic events in Bitcoin's history, known as Bitcoin Pizza Day, and it was celebrated every year on May 22nd. And just to quickly recap what happened on Bitcoin Pizza Day, as we alluded to, this guy Laszlo Hanyich, he's a programmer and was an early Bitcoin enthusiast, and he made the first recorded purchase of a physical good using Bitcoin on May of 2010, and it just so happened to be those two pizzas. And he offered 10,000 Bitcoin, which was valued at about $41 at the time, to anybody who would buy and deliver him two large pizzas. And another Bitcoin forum user, a guy who's named Jeremy Sturdivant, or Jerkos, accepted that offer, ordered him two Papa John's, and basically concluded the world's first real Bitcoin transaction. And might ask, okay, why is that significant? Well, for one, it demonstrated Bitcoin could be used as a medium of exchange. Hadn't really been done up until then, and not just abstractly. And it symbolizes Bitcoin's potential as digital cash. And probably, maybe the more tragic, ironic, or hilarious part, as we mentioned, over time, those Bitcoins grew to hundreds of millions of dollars in value. And, in today's terms, Laszlo purchased two of the most expensive pizzas ever known to mankind. And it's just a funny story, and we all love it. We love to rally behind it because somebody had to take that sacrifice. Somebody had to make the move and, spend this guy did. And we're grateful for it. And that's pretty much the crux of it.
I mean, what I love so much about Bitcoin Pizza Day is everyone knows Laszlo, no one knows Jeremy. And it's just a funny thing, because without Jeremy, there would be no transaction in the first place. And yet, another thing I often wonder, and I could have probably looked into this, I decided I actually haven't, probably will after I've said this now. How many of those BTC does Jeremy still have, if any?
Gotta wonder.
Those special sats, you have pizza sats, which were literally sats that came from that very transaction, which we've seen countless collections.
Are coveted. Yeah.
Precisely. So, but there's a fair few of them, of course. So I'm curious, I want to go back and find out how many are still in the wallet that was originally sent to, if any.
Yeah, it seems like technically that would be very possible. I guess just linking it all back.
Literally.
Yeah. What's so cool about this whole thing?
Yeah, it spurned a lot. The pizza ninjas, obviously now the pizza pets, but it has become an icon of the culture. Obviously, those sats are not that rare at all because it was so many damn Bitcoin that he used to buy it. But Crypto Knight tells us it's just under $1 billion, $984,924,425.03 as of today's exchange rate. So just an insane amount of money. But that's such a good point, Snoop, that Laszlo is the legend. Like I didn't even when you brought up Jeremy, I'm like, wait, who's that? Oh, the other guy in the transaction. I'm guessing hopefully Laszlo had another 10,000. I doubt you'd give away all of it right away, but who knows? Maybe his kids are like, Dad, You are like every day they just wake up, punch him in the Charlie horse 3 times during breakfast, and just be like, Dad, you dipshit. We could have literally been kings. Literally. But I suspect he's doing just fine.
There is an interesting connection. I like my connection isn't super great, so I don't know if you touched on this, Rollo, but we are currently talking about the mining Bitcoin shrooms, right? And what does Bitcoin Pizza Day have to do with mining? Doesn't really make sense at first glance, but very interestingly, although Laszlo is much more famous for the Bitcoin transaction, he also invented GPU mining and freely shared his invention with the Bitcoin community, I think about 15 years ago. So he was one of the forefathers of like modern Bitcoin mining, I guess you can say. And yeah, that is something that is oftentimes forgotten. He's not really known for that. He's known for the Bitcoin pizza transaction, but I think that's super interesting, and that maybe also answers your question, Blue. He probably has a couple of Bitcoin left stored away, which he's mined himself. So I hope he's fine.
Yeah. So clearly, absolutely, he was a Chad in the Bitcoin mining industry as well, and great point too, because otherwise we may not have made that connection, and it's important to note that is the theme we're in, and so that's how this piece ties in, and often forgotten, like you said.
Hypothetical, do you think had he known the price of Bitcoin now, would he do it? Or would he do it and then go to the guy and be like, all right, I'll give you $1,000 for that Bitcoin just to like get the 10,000 back or something, or be like, I'll give you my car, just give me the 10,000 back, even though it was only worth $41.
Yeah, because like if you have 20,000 Bitcoin, let's say, would you do the 10,000? Be like, well, I'll keep the other $1 billion, and just out of principle, somebody's got to do it. But it's a good point, I wonder. But the other question too is, could you think of a better advertising campaign material for Papa John's other than somebody was willing to spend $500 million on our pepperoni pie? Like, I don't know if there's a better ad you could run than our pies are worth $500 million.
Yeah.
In some regards.
Nope, but you could not.
So that's it for today's shrooms. We've done all 7, and I think what a great one to end on. I really thank you guys for your time, and thanks to all the audience members who have tuned in on our platform here today. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a giveaway. Let's see. Am I still in there? Let's just do that real quick. See who's retweeted. And stuff like that, because you had to make a comment and retweet. Can anyone else see? I can't. Oh, wait, here we go. Hold on. Let's go in, open live video. Okay, here we go. All right, we've got Blue Toshi. We've got Lulipe. Unfortunately, they don't show you anymore who's retweeted it, do they? So it's a little tougher to see. But comments, we've got Crypto Knight, we've got Schrodinger with his GMs, Mango. Good to see you, Mango. Thanks for coming.
Mango.
So we'll you know what, we'll determine it after. Let me try and figure out who actually retweeted it so I can follow my own precedents, and then we'll reach out to Rollo and make sure whoever gets it gets one of these awesome 2 bags. So you've got bag number 1 here, and then you've got where's bag number 2 giveaway.
Well, surprise, it's actually one and the same. It's a nice 2-sided bag, so you get 2.
All right.
Yeah,
I like it. Let's see if I can show. There we go. That's the cool image. So there's both sides right there. So we'll get that bag passed out. Thanks, everybody. Anybody have any last words before we sign off?
Nope, was a dope one again. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. Thanks, Rollo. Thanks, Blue, for the preparation. Also, thanks to Snoop for joining in spontaneously. Was a dope session, and I can't wait to do the next one. let's fucking go. Shrooms are coming.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for having me. And Rollo, thank you again for the immense amount of research that you pulled off spectacularly. I've learned a great deal again.
100%.
Thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Peace.
Stay safe.